He didn't just cheat. He reached across me while I was sleeping, peeled off my dead grandmother's ring and placed it on her hand like a crown. At my daughter's birthday party, she waggled her fingers in my face and said, "He chose me." I smiled. Because I'd already reported it stolen. My name is Bridget Calloway. I am 41 years old and I live on Delwood Court in Naperville, Illinois, and I want you to understand something before I tell you the rest of this. I did not see any of it coming. Not the ring. Not the woman. Not the scope of what Dennis had built behind my back while I was planning birthday party favors and frosting a 2-layer chocolate cake at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night. Mia turned 9 that Saturday. She wanted a backyard party with a balloon arch and her grandmother's lemon punch and the neighborhood kids from Waverly Lane who she'd been friends with since first grade. I had spent 3 weeks on it. I had a butterfly tablecloth from Target and a custom banner from Etsy, and I had paid $63 for a woman named Tara to twist balloons into crowns for the kids. I did not know when I woke up that morning and reached for my hand before I even opened my eyes. The way I always did because the ring had a slight edge on the left prong that I used to check was still there. I did not know it was gone until my finger touched the empty space. I thought I'd left it on the bathroom counter. I checked. I checked the kitchen. I checked the couch cushions. I told myself it would turn up. I had a party to finish setting up. Gwen Parlett arrived 40 minutes before the guests did. I did not know who Gwen Parlett was. I had never heard her name. She walked into my backyard through the side gate with a bottle of Prosecco and a smile that was already aimed at something. And Dennis crossed the yard to meet her and put his hand on the small of her back like he'd done it 10,000 times. She was wearing my grandmother's ring. I know what you are thinking. I thought the same thing. I stood at the folding table with a bag of paper plates in my hand and I looked at that ring on her finger and I counted the prongs. 4 prongs, small round diamond, thin gold band with the hairline scratch on the left side from when my grandmother caught it on a chain-link fence in 1987. I knew that ring like I knew my own face. Gwen saw me looking. She walked over. She held out her hand, palm down, close to my face and said, "He chose me." Then she turned and went back to Dennis. I smiled. Not because I was performing grace. I smiled because 3 days earlier on Wednesday morning, I had filed a police report with the Naperville Police Department for a stolen piece of jewelry, one antique gold ring with a round diamond, valued at $4,800. Belonging to my grandmother Vera Mae Hollis, deceased. Case number 2024 NP08817. The ring on Gwen Parlett's finger was stolen property. And she was wearing it at a children's birthday party in front of 12 witnesses. Before I tell you what happened in the next 10 minutes, if someone has ever smiled at you like they'd already won, hit that like button right now. I need to know I am not alone in this. Subscribe if you are new. Drop your city in the comments. And stay with me because what happened after that smile is the part that changes everything. The party continued. I'm not going to tell you I made a scene. I did not. I put out the plates. I poured the lemon punch. I watched Dennis move through my backyard like a man who believed he had already solved the problem of me, and I kept my face open and easy and I smiled at everyone who asked me if I needed help. What I was doing underneath all of that was counting. I had 14 people in my backyard who had just watched Gwen Parlett extend her hand toward my face. Of those 14, 3 were adults. My neighbor Patrice Okonkwo from 3 houses down, Dennis's college friend Ray Durbin and his wife, Carol, who had driven up from Bloomington. The other 11 were 9-year-olds who did not know what they had witnessed but who had definitely looked up when Gwen spoke. Patrice had been standing 6 feet away. Patrice had seen the ring up close because she had once at my kitchen table, held my grandmother's ring in her hand and told me the diamond caught light in a specific way that made it look like it was lit from inside. Patrice looked at Gwen's hand. Patrice looked at me. She did not say anything. She picked up a cup of lemon punch and moved to the other side of the table, and I would not understand until later exactly what Patrice had already understood. Dennis did not speak to me once during that party except to say, "Where'd you put the extra ice?" I told him the garage. He went. He came back with ice. He laughed at something Ray said. He cut Mia's cake and handed her the piece with the most frosting, which is the thing he has always done, and she wrapped her arms around his neck and I watched my daughter be held by her father and I let myself feel that for exactly 4 seconds. Then I went inside and called my cousin Deanna Marsh, who is a paralegal at Whitmore and Strand in downtown Chicago, and I said, "I need the name of a divorce attorney and I need it before Monday." Deanna said, "How long?" I said, I think longer than I want to know. He gave me the name. Paula Fitch, Naperville Family Law on Washington Street. She said Paula did not lose custody cases. I said I was not at the custody stage yet. Deanna said, you are. You just don't know it. I did not fully understand what Deanna meant by that. Not until Tuesday. Because here is what I did not know on Saturday afternoon. Dennis had not just been having an affair with Gwen Parlett. He had been moving money. Not a little. Not the kind of money you move when you are buying someone jewelry and hiding receipts. The kind of money you move when you are planning to leave and you want to land somewhere soft. I did not know that yet. On Saturday I was still in the phase where I thought the ring was the worst thing. I had not yet opened the Regions Bank app on Sunday morning and found that the joint savings account I had watched us build for 11 years. The account with the money we were saving for Mia's college tuition and a kitchen renovation and the deck Dennis had been talking about for 3 summers, that account had a balance of $412. It had contained $67,250 the last time I checked. Which had been 14 days ago. My coffee went cold that morning. I poured it and set it down and forgot it 3 separate times while I sat at the kitchen table and opened every app on my phone that was connected to our finances. The mortgage account. Current, no issues. The joint checking, $930, which was low but not unusual for mid-month. The savings account, $412. The account I was on jointly with Dennis through his work benefits, the one I had signing authority on but almost never checked. Empty. 0 balance. Last transaction was a wire transfer dated 11 days ago. I wrote down the account number it wired to. I did not recognize it. I wrote down $67,250 on a piece of paper in my own handwriting and I looked at it until the numbers stopped looking like numbers. I called Paula Fitch's office on Sunday and left a message. She called me back Monday at 7:45 in the morning, which told me something about Paula Fitch. She asked me to tell her what I knew. I told her. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Do you have access to a scanner or a printer with scan capability?" I said yes. She said, "I need everything you can get to me by Wednesday. Bank statements, tax returns for the last 3 years if you can find them, the mortgage documents, anything related to his business accounts." Then she said, "Is there any chance he knows you know?" I thought about Gwen Parlett in my backyard, Prosecco in hand, ring on her finger, smile already assembled. I said, "He thinks I am standing in a corner looking at the floor." Paula said, "Good. Keep standing there. Until Wednesday." Dennis was in our house that whole weekend moving around the kitchen watching football asking where the remote was. He slept in our bed on Saturday night and I lay next to him in the dark and counted the money in my head. $67,250. I stared at the ceiling and I thought about my grandmother's hands, which were small and always a little cold, and how she pressed that ring into my palm 2 weeks before she died and said, "This is yours, Bridget. No matter what." I did not sleep. I lay there and I let myself be still for the last time before everything began to move. I need you to pause with me here for 1 second. Because what I am about to tell you, what I found on Tuesday, is the part where most people say, "No. That cannot be real." I need you to hit that like button if you are still with me. And if you have ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you so badly that they handed you exactly what you needed. Right, they had no idea in the comments. Stay with me. This is where everything flips. Tuesday, I left work at Glenbrook Medical Supply, where I have been a contracts administrator for 9 years at 12:15. My supervisor, Ned Harwick, thinks I take long lunches because I have a slow metabolism and need to walk. What Ned Harwick does not know is that I have been reading contracts for almost a decade and I can find a material discrepancy in a legal document the way other people find typos. I drove to the DuPage County Recorder of Deeds office on Main Street in Wheaton. It took me 22 minutes. I told the woman at the counter I needed to look up a property record. She handed me a terminal. I typed in Dennis Calloway. Naperville, Illinois. Property records current. He came up twice. Our house on Delwood Court. And a condominium at 2214 Riverview Place, Unit 12 in Warrenville, purchased 14 months ago for $312,000. A property I had never heard of. In a name I recognized, Dennis R. Calloway. With a co-borrower listed as Gwendolyn A. Parlett. I photographed every page on my phone. I stood at that terminal for 6 minutes without moving. A woman waiting behind me eventually said, "Excuse me, honey, are you done?" And I stepped aside and walked outside into the November cold and sat in my car in the parking lot on Main Street in Wheaton, and I did not cry. I want you to know that. I did not cry. I opened my phone and I texted Paula Fitch. "I found the condo. Co-borrower on the mortgage. $312,000. Paula responded in 4 minutes. "Do not say anything to him. I'll have the filing ready by Thursday." I sat in that parking lot for another 11 minutes. Then I drove back to Glenbrook Medical Supply and spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing a 40-page equipment lease like nothing in my life had changed at all. Dennis came home that night and asked what was for dinner. I said pasta. He said great. He watched television. He texted someone, but he always texted someone. He always had his phone face down. I set 2 plates on the table. We ate. He said the sauce was good. I said thank you. He went to bed at 10:15. I stayed up until 1 in the morning, scanning every document I could find in the filing cabinet in the office. Tax returns. 2021, 2022, 2023. The mortgage documents from when we bought the house on Delwood Court. Dennis's life insurance policy. Mia's school enrollment forms with both our names on them. His business license, because Dennis has a residential HVAC company, Callaway Climate Solutions, which he started 6 years ago and which I had co-signed the initial financing for. On the 2022 tax return, under business income, I found a number that did not match what Dennis had told me we made that year. He had told me the business brought in about $90,000. The tax return showed a gross of $214,000, with expenses that reduced the taxable net to $61,000. The difference on paper was labeled equipment and materials. But I had been reading contracts for 9 years. Those expense categories were not equipment and materials. They were structured the way you structure expenses when you are moving business income somewhere. It will not show up as personal income. I called Deanna at 1:15 in the morning. She picked up. "That is the kind of woman Deanna is." I said, "He's been running money through the business." She said, "For how long?" I looked at the 2021 return. I said, "At least 3 years." She was quiet. Then she said, "Bridget, that's not divorce. That's fraud." I looked at the stack of documents on the kitchen table. I thought about Gwen Parlett at a terminal in this same county records office, signing her name next to Dennis's on a mortgage. I thought about the wire transfer from our savings account 11 days ago. I thought about case number 2024 NP08817. On Thursday, Paula Fitch filed for divorce in DuPage County Circuit Court. She also filed a motion for emergency asset preservation, citing evidence of financial dissipation, which meant a judge could freeze Dennis's accounts while the case was pending. The filing included the property record from Riverview Place, the business tax returns, the wire transfer documentation, and a certified copy of the police report for a stolen ring. Paula had told me Wednesday evening, "We can ask for the ring back as part of marital asset recovery. It belonged to you before the marriage. We have the theft report. And we have a witness who can confirm it was your property." I said, "What witness?" She said, "Patrice Okonkwo filed a statement with the Naperville Police Department on Monday morning. She described the ring in specific detail, confirmed she had held it in her hand approximately 8 months prior, and identified it on Gwendolyn Parlett's finger at the birthday party. She included 3 photographs she took on her phone during the party." Paula paused. "Apparently your neighbor is very thorough." I sat with that for a moment. Patrice, who had stood 6 feet away and said nothing and moved to the other side of the table with her cup of lemon punch. Patrice, who I had known for 5 years, who had never once indicated she was paying that particular kind of attention. I thought about the way she had looked at Gwen's hand. The way she had looked at me. Patrice had not been doing nothing. Patrice had been documenting. Dennis was served on Thursday afternoon. He was in the driveway of a client's home in Lisle when the process server found him, which I did not plan but which Paula told me about afterward with what I can only describe as professional satisfaction. He called me 4 times in the next hour. I let them go to voicemail. Then he texted, "We need to talk." Then, "Bridget, I know you're upset but we can handle this." Then, "Where is Mia?" I texted back, "Mia is with me. She's fine. Speak to my attorney." Then I blocked his number and changed the locks on Delwood Court. I want to tell you about the Friday morning 2 weeks later when I walked into the DuPage County Courthouse on County Farm Road for the emergency hearing. I want to tell you about it in the exact order it happened because the order matters. I arrived at 8:45. Paula was waiting in the hallway outside courtroom 7 with a file folder that was 2 inches thick. She was wearing gray and she had the specific energy of someone who had already run the numbers and liked what she found. She said, "His attorney asked for a continuance. Judge Merritt denied it. We go in 20 minutes. The emergency asset preservation motion was heard by Judge Carolyn Merritt, who had been on the DuPage County bench for 14 years. Paula presented the wire transfer documentation, the Riverview Place deed, the business tax returns with the annotated expense discrepancies, and Patrice's police statement with the photographs attached. Dennis's attorney, a man named Garfield Pruitt, argued that the savings account withdrawal had been a mutual decision and that the business expenses were legitimate and properly categorized. Paula said, "Your Honor, I have here a written statement from the accountant who prepared the 2021, 2022 and 2023 tax returns for Callaway Climate Solutions." She set a document on the clerk's desk. In that statement, the accountant confirms he prepared the returns based on documentation provided by Mr. Callaway and that he was not informed that the expense categorizations were being used to reclassify personal income. He has also provided a corrected estimate of the business's actual net income over those 3 years. The difference between the reported net and the actual net is $162,000. Garfield Pruitt looked at his client. Dennis was sitting at the table in a dark jacket and he had his hands flat on the surface in front of him and he was looking at the document Paula had just placed on the clerk's desk like it had arrived from a direction he had not been watching. I know I am not supposed to feel what I felt in that moment. But I am going to tell you anyway. I felt clear. Not happy. Not vindicated. Just completely entirely clear. The way a room feels after you open a window that has been painted shut for years. Judge Merritt froze the accounts associated with Callaway Climate Solutions pending a full forensic accounting. She also ordered the return of the ring described in case number 2024 NP08817 within 72 hours, finding that the documented evidence supported the claim of property belonging to the petitioner. Gwen Parlett was not in the courtroom, but she had to send the ring to Paula's office by Monday. Dennis sat at that table with his hands flat in front of him and I watched the performance go out of him. Not dramatically. Not in a speech. The way a screen dims when the power cuts. Not off, just suddenly less bright, less present, less certain of its own light. I did not say anything to him. I did not need to. Paula had said everything that needed to be said and she had said it in a room that had a court reporter and a judge and a case number. Outside the courthouse, Patrice was waiting on a bench near the entrance. She had driven 40 minutes to sit on that bench. She stood up when she saw me and she held out her arms and I walked into them and she said into my hair, "I took 47 pictures at that party, Bridget. I wanted to make sure I had a good one." I laughed. I could not help it. I pressed my face into her shoulder and I laughed for the first time in 3 weeks and it sounded wrong and right at the same time, the way things sound when they have been held in too long. The divorce took 7 months. At the final settlement, Dennis was required to account for $162,000 in reclassified business income. The Riverview Place condo was ordered sold, with 50% of the equity, $41,600, going toward Mia's college fund. The savings account funds, traced through the wire transfer to a personal account Dennis had opened in his name only, were returned in full. $67,250. Back in a joint account that became, as of the date the divorce was finalized, mine alone. Paula got the ring back on a Tuesday. She handed it to me across her desk in a small padded envelope. I opened it and there it was. The thin gold band. The round diamond. The hairline scratch on the left side from a chain-link fence in the summer of 1987. I put it on my right hand where it had always belonged and I said thank you to Paula Fitch and I walked out into the February cold on Washington Street and got into my car. I drove to Patrice's house. I knocked on the door. She opened it and she had a dish towel in her hand and she looked at my right hand and she saw the ring and she said, "Good." That was all. Just good. I opened a sole proprietorship in March. Callaway Contracts Consulting. I filed the paperwork on a Tuesday morning in the DuPage County Clerk's office, paid the $60 filing fee, and walked out with a certificate that had only my name on it. The first client inquiry came 12 days later. A small business in Downers Grove that needed someone to review their supplier agreements. I sat at my kitchen table on a Wednesday afternoon with a contract in front of me and a cup of coffee that was still hot because I had not forgotten it was there, and I worked for 3 hours without stopping, and when I was done I sent an invoice for $400 and it felt like the first money I had ever made. Mia knows her father made some choices that hurt our family. She is 9. We do not give her more than that. On Sundays she comes with me to the farmer's market on Eagle Street and she picks out whatever fruit she wants and she holds my hand when we cross the parking lot, not because she has to but because she still wants to. Last Sunday she picked persimmons. She had never had one. She carried the paper bag all the way to the car and she said, "Mom, do you think Grandma Vera would have liked these?" And I said I thought she absolutely would have. Mia held the bag in her lap the whole drive home. I pulled into the driveway of the house on Delwood Court and turned off the engine and sat there for a moment. The morning light was coming through the windshield at the angle it only comes in October, low and amber and completely unhurried. The ring caught it on my right hand. I looked at it. The hairline scratch. The specific way the diamond holds the light like it is lit from inside. I thought, this was always mine. Then I got out of the car and unlocked the front door and let us both in.